French President Emmanuel Macron is cracking down on French Muslims. He says Islam is a religion that's in crisis all over the world. Islamists have built a separate culture in France that rejects Republican values. He vows to create an enlightened Islam. He's been closing mosques, arresting people, and shutting down humanitarian and anti-racism organizations with Muslim connections. His latest move, a charter of republic values. He's given Muslim leaders 2 weeks to accept it. The charter affirms French values. It asserts that Islam is a religion, not a political movement. It bans foreign interference in Muslim groups, and it calls for the strict regulation of imams. Macron also announced a new bill. Children will be given identification numbers to make sure they go to school. Parents who homeschool their children could go to jail. Gender-segregated swim times are banned. Providing menus in school cafeterias with halal options, also banned. For Muslims in France, none of this is new. France is proud of its unique version of secularism, which it calls laïcité. And who can forget the Republic's rallying call of liberte, egalite, fraternite? But these values haven't been used in a universal way, not in the past and not to this day. You see, France has always had different standards for Muslims. Think back to the vast Muslim populations it ruled over. France wanted to civilize them. That was its mission. French subjects weren't considered ready or deserving of freedom. France was passing historic laws in 1881, protecting freedom of speech for its French citizens. At the same time, it was passing laws restricting speech for its subjects in the colonies. And Muslims in Algeria endured more than a century of exploitation and dehumanization. Their culture was looked down upon. Their religious beliefs and practices were discouraged. Mosques were seized and converted into French establishments. The famous 1905 law on the separation of church and state was supposed to apply to Algeria, but the French state continued to appoint and control imams until independence. Republican values from the very beginning have been conditional. They've been actively denied to Muslims. And that sense of superiority and need to civilize Muslims persist. France still tries to control Muslims. France has the largest Muslim population in Europe. Most are immigrants from former colonies like Algeria. Macron says they choose to live separately. But the reality is, these Muslims exist on the margins of society with little power or influence. Racism makes it tough to find jobs, even for those who are well-educated and qualified. Muslims are more likely to get rejected when they apply for housing. Upward mobility is a pipe dream. The majority live in ghettos called banlieues, which are overcrowded and crumbling and rife with poverty and crime. More than half of the prison population is Muslim, and police brutality is well documented. Under the pretext of laïcité, French laws are used to exclude and target Muslims. Girls aren't allowed to wear the headscarf to school. According to the 1905 separation of church and state law, the state isn't supposed to interfere with religion. Yet the government went ahead and created a religious body to govern Muslims, a body that isn't well known or recognized by most Muslims. This is a country where hatred for Islam is part of everyday speech. Muslims hear that they're backward, they're disloyal, they're incapable of integrating, they're terrorists. France's own education minister describes left-leaning politicians as apologists for Islamic extremists. The interior minister has even condemned halal food aisles in supermarkets. This is a country that tells Muslims they don't understand free speech, even as it has some of the most extensive limits on free speech in a liberal democracy. Soon after the most recent terrorist attacks, French police arrested dozens of people for allegedly defending or glorifying terrorism. But it seems Muslims just aren't civilized enough to get the difference. It's hard to ignore echoes of France's historic treatment of Algerians. France seems to insist on excluding Muslims from the Republic, making them feel like second-class citizens. If France wants to liberate Islam in France, perhaps it should begin by taking some responsibility for the alienation and racism experienced by French Muslims. Treating them with respect and dignity would go a long way to ensuring the promise of liberté, égalité, and fraternité hold true for all. I'm Safiyyah Ally for Let the Quran Speak. If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe, and please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.